Okay, my name is Sherry Ivory, and this is an oral presentation for American Lit 2010. Today's date is July 12th, 2015, and I am doing my oral presentation on the world of Emily Dickinson. Emily Dickinson lived in life as one would have in death, a shy, private, isolated recluse who rarely went out into the world, her home as if her tomb. I don't go from home unless emergency leads me by the hand, and then I do it obstinately and draw back if I can. Was Emily's way of looking at life or death not as heaven or hell, but as death walking about with us in the physical world? Born December 10th, 1830 in Amherst, Massachusetts, into an educated Puritan family, Emily had a limited number of women role models growing up. Her role model that mattered most was Elizabeth Barrett Browning, who may have been the one who led Dickinson into her vocation above all. Emily came from a prominent family. She wrote more than 1,800 poems, mostly written to friends and family. She deflected opportunities to publish during her lifetime. Only about 10 of her poems were published before her death in 1886. Despite then the difficulty of identifying the real Emily Dickinson through her letters, in one of her signature poems, she famously referred to the project as a letter to the world. For much of her adult life, she was reclusive and homebound, and letters provided her with a social context that was otherwise lacking. Her preoccupation with death may have come from extensive familiarity with her own battles. 33 of her closest friends and family died within 3 years. Then her own lifelong battle with death of a long-term illness of a kidney condition called Bright's disease that finally had taken her life in May of 1886. Like most poets and writers, Dickinson wrote what she knew most about. From Dickinson's poems, you might also suppose that she had died and written them posthumously. To have been immortal transcends to become so. She knew about death intimately, explaining her obsession of writing about death. According to Perry Miller, the work of Emily Dickinson is invoked as a figure of what would later be called the mind of New England, assuming its rightful and culturally dominant position as a representative not only of United States mind, but also of all mind on the stage of world literature. Now I will read her poem 712, Because I Could Not Stop Death. Because I could not stop death, he kindly stopped me. The carriage held but just ourselves and in immortality. We slowly drove, he knew no haste, but I had put away my labor and my leisure too, for his civility. We passed the school where children strove at recess in the ring. We passed the fields of grazing grain. We passed the setting sun. Or rather, he passed us. The dews drew quivering and chill, for only gossamer my gown, my tippet only tulle. We paused before a house that seemed a swelling of the ground. The roof was scarcely visible, the cornice in the ground. Since then, 'tis centuries, and yet feel shorter than the day I first submerged the horses' heads were toward eternally. Emily Dickinson. Because I Could Not Stop Death, one of Dickinson's most celebrated poems, has a particular wordplay with death. As we analyze this poem, we will be able to see Emily's view as death walks alongside her as a beau that is a chaperone, that slowly takes her through the stages of her life into immortality. Death calls upon her because she cannot stop for death. He is courteous as he stops for her. So in the second stanza, she is polite in the stoppage, as they pass the time by the school as children play at recess and the grain ripen. This showing that time has passed in growing of age and of maturity. They are passing the setting of the sun, representing the time coming to an end, as this is representing old age. The coolness of the night, she is finding herself unprepared with the improper clothing for the cool evening air in her gossamer gown. As they draw near to the cemetery, to the wooer it seems as though it has only been one short night, but it has been a slow, leisurely journey towards the house, a swelling of the ground, her coffin, and her tomb. The centuries feel shorter than a day. Her journey has slowed down, ever so slowly, as now they have reached the end of her journey. The horses' heads suggest that her soul may rest here for all eternity. This poem shows that she has gone with death on an optimistic, progressive journey, and that there is not much to fear from death. That death walks with us daily from the starting point of our lives to the end of our lives with nothing to fear of it. It is a natural progression, and one should accompany death gracefully. She is unprepared for death, and yet she has been prepared for death and ready for her eternal rest in the afterlife. So in conclusion, as soon as we are born, we start to die. So in a way, Emily Dickinson was just a realist when it came to death. We walk with death every day in our physical world. As we live, we are preparing for death.